Hi everyone, and welcome to the new predictions for the week of December 2nd, 2019. These are based on astrological transits. First, a quick overview of the week. We have several ongoing global influences that will continue this week and also for some weeks to come. Number one influence is the Saturn and Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, which typically coincides with major geopolitical changes, also shifts in basically power, and this may involve removal of old leaders that have been in power for literally decades passing away, or perhaps just parties changing power. Again, something that has been maybe the structure that has been in place for a long time is now being totally basically replaced, and this may involve corporations, especially large established and prominent corporations, as well as countries and or entities. So anything along the lines of like Brexit, tensions between say US and China, or basically within parts of any country where entities want to separate or join to form a new country, etc. All of those really large and long-term shifts are more likely to take place right now, and this will only continue to increase into 2020. So the other influence, something that begins this week and actually will be in place through about December of 2020, is we're going to have Jupiter enter also Capricorn. So yet again, more emphasis on Capricorn, and Jupiter brings with it expansion and kind of increase of the either sort of topics that are associated with Capricorn and events that are colored, by the same energy. So more news about government, large corporations, established older leaders, including conservative leaders, conservative sort of approaches to things. And Jupiter may bring more of it, so more kind of governmental controls, more focus on how government regulates something, more restrictions and or more just regulation. Obviously Capricorn is not just bringing restriction for the sake of restriction, but rather things that maybe were growing out of control or growing sort of to the point that they couldn't be sustained, such as perhaps immigration, where people weren't being checked properly. Now this is something that's going to be getting into this Capricornian mold, and things will be a lot more organized, structured, with certain sort of limits and quotas and stricter checks, etc. Other Jupiterian things would have to do with, generally speaking, laws, especially international laws, international shipments, and anything that involves this long-distance transportation, communication, import-export. So all of those things will become, including international relations, contracts, anything that needs to be legalized, or people need some documents and paperwork in order to, for shipment to go through or for individuals to move across the border. All of those things will become kind of more tied to government, or the process will be longer than before when Jupiter was going through its own sign that it rules, Sagittarius. So things now will be kind of, on the one hand, things may be more clear, so the rules may be more defined. On the other hand, there'll be more, like I said, limitations, quotas, and the process, with Capricorn, things usually take a long time. There may be delays and or just things that will also occur under this time. So perhaps there's a law that is put in place regarding, for example, immigration, or some sort of a transportation, or how ships enter port of some sort of port, or how airlines conduct their businesses, etc. So all of those maybe areas, if there is a law that's passed at this time, or some sort of decision is reached among, say, several international entities, those laws will be more likely to stay in place for, again, long time to come. So things kind of evolve slowly, but then once they're in place, they also will be more likely to stay as they are. And again, there in other industries that are related to Capricorn could be, for example, mining, coal, steel, anything that's underground and involves either digging underground or building things that are made of like rock and metal, something really large scale construction. So all of that should kind of expand under Capricorn, under Jupiterian influences, to the point where maybe there's too much like mountains, you know, of sort of buildings that maybe are built to last, but maybe are not as sort of heartwarming and cozy to be in. Again, buildings that kind of look maybe kind of cold and sort of uninviting, such as, you know, government official building, that are not meant to be your cozy home. They're meant to be places where certain things, you know, laws are passed and the decisions are made, etc. Similarly, it favors leaders that are like older, cold, you know, older male and conservative, or just have this kind of a more pessimistic or sober sort of mindset. And similarly, when we had Jupiter in Sagittarius, we also had kind of investors would be, you know, just as a whole, the mood there would be more conducive to taking risk, just optimism, you know, overboard with things are just coming and no worry, versus Capricorn now kind of brings this voice of reason, and the appetite for risk will most likely reduce, and the thoughts, you know, or the mood may swing to kind of a more of a long-term thinking, playing things a little bit safer, and decrease, like I said, appetite for risk. So that's something that this is the beginning of this influence that we will be experiencing this week, but this is something that will be in place, as I said, through about December of 2020. So let's see. So now moving on to individual days of this week. I'm recording this on December 2nd, so I already saw that my prediction for Monday actually was not correct. My prediction that I posted on my blog at plastunka.com yesterday on Sunday was that Monday and Tuesday will be up days, and then on Wednesday through Friday will be down days, especially on Friday. Now on Monday, we actually had a down day, so we'll see how the rest of the week goes. But I did expect on Monday that in the early morning there will be some announcement about either finance or earnings, rates or savings, and apparently there was some news about earnings, but I guess they were negative or there were some concerns, and so the market went down. And again, the influence for Monday was the focus on the governmental policies regarding finance, cash, and the decisions would be such that it would help individuals to take on loans or get credit, perhaps some sort of a way to make it easier for individuals to obtain credit. However, I was expecting that the perception of this either event or process or decision would be negative, perhaps because, again, the government involvement is perceived as to be as too much, or maybe there are controls that are put in place that are perceived as being you know, obstacles. And I literally wrote earnings are reduced, availability of cash is limited, cash flow slows down. Again, I didn't really have time to kind of look at the news much today, but I did see that, again, market went down, and apparently there were some concerns about reduced earnings, so perhaps this influence apparently was more dominant for today, and the market actually went down. However, this same influence will continue into Tuesday. So if this influence was dominant on Monday, then perhaps Tuesday will continue actually to be a down day, even though otherwise it looked fine to me. And my original prediction for it that I posted yesterday was up. However, regardless, on Wednesday, I think there will be a re-review of whatever the news that came out today, perhaps about earnings or governmental decisions related to, say, finance. If there are any such news, there may be a re-review of those and a readjustment of those on Wednesday. So if, say, there was concerns about earnings, then on Wednesday things may come up that there's a correction, or if there's a decision you know, that relates to some sort of government control over either credit or loans or cash given to the banks or something like that, then again there may be review of that, and some adjustment may follow on Wednesday. So far my prediction stands for Tuesday that the market may go up. However, like I said, if the predominant influence will be concerns about this unpopular move regarding money or decreased earnings, then obviously it may go down. But like I said, for the final answer is up. Wednesday, I think it will be, like I said, the readjustment over whatever decisions that may have come up regarding finance, money, earnings, and governmental regulation or governmental some sort of involvement in that. On Wednesday, there will be a readjustment or revision, or additional information may come up. And so I think the influence will be mostly negative. So I give it about 55% chance that the market will go down. So primarily because I don't see too many positive supportive aspects, and so it looks slightly negative to me. And let's see. I also think that on Wednesday we will see increase in some sort of either concerns or kind of information that's somewhat confusing, where the next steps of some decision or future developments in certain areas may not be clear, and so the market may react negatively to it because, again, of some sort of uncertainty in the air. And we also may see increased news about things like oil, navy, and beverages, movies, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, drugs, poisons, and like I said, there may be concerns about some stability or reliability either of products or companies in these areas, or in general about sort of situations that involve kind of maybe, like I said, maybe governmental decisions, and something may be unclear basically. And it's not that the Wednesday looks so bad on its own, but that unclarity may kind of trigger, like I said, either confusion or just kind of desire to play it safe, and market may go down on Wednesday. And something that these concerns, these minor concerns, or just kind of minor jitters that come up on Wednesday may then kind of be either clarified, and kind of if there's an uncertainty on Wednesday whether the outcome of, say, some sort of a negotiation is positive or negative, by Friday and or Saturday of this week it will most likely be clarified what the actual outcome is, or the uncertainty is kind of going to be clarified. However, I think the chances will be higher that the clarification will come up with a negative sort of outcome. So if maybe there's a uncertainty about some, say US and China negotiating on something, that the outcome by Friday and or Saturday may be negative, and that's why I think on Friday of all of the days of the week is the highest probability that the market will go down. So let's see, Thursday I think market will also be going down, and Friday has the strongest signature of all the days this week. So Friday and into Saturday there may be yet again increased concerns about some sort of lies or confusion, or maybe one party not staying sort of with its promises, maybe even resorting to cheating, and or perhaps there are laws that are not being followed, or a law is implemented to specifically sponsor, cheating or something like that, or support cheating through, coming up with some loophole. There also may be concerns about wet weather or problems with shipping, especially over water. This could be again due to some international situation, or some legal barrier, or literally some powerful individual that is in charge of some sort of shipment or shipping company, or has some sort of influence on shipping, especially internationally, may not be available, or the person may just be, maybe they're sick, for example, or they just be acting kind of irresponsible, and so there might be problems with shipments, or could be, for example, problems with shipments due to even just weather. And again, increased also focus on other areas related to the same sort of area, such as, beverages, drugs, chemicals, poisons, even religion, maybe religious figures may be prominent. Again, that's Friday, Saturday. And let's see, and again, such prominent figures could be experiencing some either health issues, especially say they're poisoned, or they're just kind of not really there, where they are, saying things that are not true, whether it's on purpose or simply because they're not really aware of the situation, be it for health reasons or just for some other confusing reasons, or even there might be news about some prominent individual caught on, say, lying or making up things. And these areas will continue. By these areas, I mean chemicals, oil, beverages, religion, etc. They will remain in the focus through the weekend, but they will gain even greater attention next week, especially December 11 through 14, with December 12, 13 being likely dates where we may really hear about some important events. And on December 12, 13, which is next week, I expect greater than average market moves. So speaking of next, sort of upcoming weeks here, just to give you a quick glance ahead, on December 10 through 14, which is again next week, there will be increased focus on finance, cash availability, and rates, and just in general financial institutions and banks. There may be some concerns about the cash flow, and it may be resolved by banks receiving support from the government. And there may also be some favorable legal change made to, again, support that cash flow perhaps, or support, flow of goods across borders. And similarly, some international entities may strike a large deal. That's for next week. Similarly, there may be again focus on cash flow and governmental involvement in either regulating like earnings, profits, or again setting up some quotas or something like that, or perhaps restructuring how, say, banks do things, again to help banks basically be more responsible and more stable. So some sort of governmental influence, or by setting controls, or by facilitating things, or by introducing some restructuring to help, I guess, regulate, I guess, either earnings or financial flow. And there may also be increased news about cryptocurrencies, and their use or their value, especially internationally, may increase, or their use may expand. And lastly, there may be increased news next week about industries or companies related to steel, coal, mining, oil, and rocks, and metals in general. And so the value of the related commodities or profit from them may go up if such reports are expected. Let's see. And as I said before, that certain days, especially 12 and 13, will likely see significant market moves. Then also pretty much the entire month of December, which captures already part of this week, approximately the 8th through the 22nd, should be a favorable time for businesses and projects related to IT, telecoms, high-tech, electric power, innovation, etc. So thinking, Tesla, sending some rockets into space, or just like I said, telecoms, any company that deals with, say, computers or provides services, for sending data, etc. So these businesses may receive a boost, again, through governmental support, most likely, through perhaps, again, making some things easier for them, so making it easier for them to operate, perhaps, or investments, or receiving some contracts, or removing some legal limitations and controls, and or facilitating growth overseas, so international expansion. And I'm not talking about just US companies, I'm saying that this might be, generally speaking, whatever companies, is related to these areas. It might be easier for them to grow and expand to more locations, or to make connections with international partners. And similarly, there may be accelerated expansion or some positive news related to banks, finance, cryptocurrencies, and high tech. So something along the lines of like, fintech or something may be featured, and there might be greater accelerated, rate of adopting some new technologies by banks or financial institution. And this could be, again, due to support from the government, either through kind of removing legal obstacles, or by sort of making conditions somehow more favorable. And lastly, something to note at the very end of the December into about mid-January, we will have, especially January 9 and 12 of 2020, this will be a fairly tense time, and of course this falls on this New Year celebration, etc. However, unfortunately, it is also a time of increased geopolitical tensions where we may expect like a major actual event occurs. So it's not just tensions sort of are in the air or these negotiations. There may actually be some events like, you know, culmination of tensions through, I don't know, say protests, of course, but protests that perhaps are more violent or result in something. Either the protesters receive what they want or there's some sort of a break and those protests take a totally different form and become kind of more serious or involve more serious leaders, like more people join at a higher level, or protests again results in, you know, people receiving what they actually were demanding, or some leader is even removed because perhaps this leader is not cooperating or is seen as incapable of managing those protests. And similarly, there may be some other kind of disasters that occur, something along the lines of earthquakes, mudslides, storms, power loss, contagious disease may be spreading kind of more easily at that time, even a nuclear accident, collapse of a recycling plant or a mine. So something that's like earth-shaking, and again, we have protests, but something that suddenly is an event, like, okay, a major building that's been in place, you know, for a long time, maybe some sort of, you know, ancient, you know, important building is burned down, for example, right? Or people are protesting on the bridge and the bridge collapses, or something that's related to this kind of anger and perhaps geopolitical shifts where maybe two countries are been always bickering, you know, makes me think of India and Pakistan or something like that. But finally there's an event where there is, you know, a skirmish or something that's kind of more worth noteworthy as an actual event that is reported in the news. And at the same time, you know, perhaps these will be a result of or lead into actual like decision that's made by some governments to either, like I said, put an end to something, or it could be a decision, like I said, say there are protests and finally government, you know, comes up with some sort of new policy to address that. So there may be also some sort of decision that is either decision has been pending and now it's final, or some major public announcement is made about either a new law, a new treaty, new legal decision, creating a new block of countries, separation of you know, previous sort of partners, like a exit from a block of some sort, or, you know, separation of two entities that previously were part of the same union. And we're talking about countries, but we're also talking about, say, large established corporations. So maybe you know, two corporations merge, and or even more likely that previously inseparable seemingly partners or division, you know, is being completely cut off and becomes its own. So something really major, like a major restructuring. And this event may have really international significance, or something that will be recognized by many people internationally, and or affect just large numbers of people, such as, again, the level of the country, level of large, you know, employer. So many, you know, employees are affected because perhaps a part of the country and part of the company is sold off or is closed or something like that. Let's see. And it may involve, you know, either a larger entity breaking up into smaller territories reuniting to create a country, and or there may also be news about perhaps violent removal of leadership, or leaders just stepping away or being considered basically not capable of leaving, and it's not going to be pretty. Let's see. And at that time, of course, in the market, because of these major changes and just general instability, the reaction most likely will be, again, to take things easy, and if not necessarily pull all the money out, but rather just kind of slow down and reduce risk and sort of do things long term. And so most likely it will be initially down. However, once that legal document is in place or this legal decision is made, perhaps again address like protest or address this sort of a negative initial events. Once that's in place or the agreement is finalized, then the market may actually go down. So this potentially could be related to, of course, we have the US and China negotiating, and so this could be something along the lines of, you know, US and China perhaps going through some tensions and market going down on what seems to be like a really serious, you know, discontent or an ability to reach a decision, but then a decision, some sort of international large-scale decision is made, and there's a new legal, you know, agreement or partnership, or new goals are set, and those most likely will be probably negotiate or come from the US as a sort of a taking initiative in that. And once that is in place, which most likely will happen towards the end of this period, you know, towards January 15th, at that point the market may go down sort of on a positive news of this difficult time being, you know, resulting in some sort of actual agreement. And just to wrap this up, the entire 2020 that's coming up here soon looks like a very serious year, and especially it will be serious for folks from signs that are cardinal signs, meaning Capricorn, of course, where we have a whole bunch of planets, and now we have Jupiter there too. And also, of course, Cancer, Libra, and Aries, especially if people's, you know, plans are towards middle to the end degrees. Those folks may especially feel sort of that there are a lot of challenges that they have to be going through, and since this is what 1/3 of the zodiac, right? We're talking about 4 out of 12 signs, so we're going to have sort of a lot of people, especially people who are typically very like focused on things, and they like things to be, I guess, they like to have sort of control over what things that are happening. They may feel maybe that there are additional challenges that are being put on them, and so of course, either if you're one of them or you have folks around you, and most likely will have a whole bunch of people in the workplace, or even your bosses, then obviously no need to press against that energy. The energy of Capricorn is actually very helpful for addressing things that happen slowly and take their time, like, you know, tooth or something like that, to repair some things, their bones or whatever. They grow slowly, but then once they're you know, fully developed, they're very strong, and then they can withstand a lot. So kind of going with that energy, one could kind of benefit the most and take, you know, the best of manifest it in the most positive way, rather than kind of trying to go through like really fast, or trying to, you know, break the wall to kind of get through it, because the wall most likely through 2020 will be pretty thick. And again, it's better to just kind of build things, you know, slowly, one, you know, brick at a time, and kind of just build your own, like, whatever you want to build, slowly but steadily. And as a reward for that, things will be again in place for many years to come. However, at the same time, what it means for the planet in the past, when we had these kind of strong aspects as we have coming up in 2020, again, increase in earthquakes, disasters, etc., and geopolitical shifts over, you know, long-lasting nature. And I will be covering this up in the upcoming review of predictions, rather, for 2020. I'll try to maybe have a shorter video with just highlights, and then kind of a longer video where I would get into more specific dates. So this wraps up this week for me, and I hope this was informative and interesting, and you'll come back next week to check me out. And for now, have a great week, everyone. Bye.